So we saw a massive sterling rally on the news that UK Prime Minister May is calling this election for June the 8th. What is driving the sterling's rally? I think a couple of things. Obviously, one of those being simply short covering. We have a dramatic new news item, and when you have a new news item in a market that is very strongly speculatively short the pound, the first instinct is to cover positioning to assess the situation. So I think a lot of this is short covering. We also progressed to a number of very key technical levels, especially in sterling versus the dollar. We had a recent high just above 126, also the 200-day moving average located there, and as well these levels all the way up to close to 128, which was a previous major low just after the Brexit vote last June, was even punctured. So obviously a lot of resting stop orders aggravating the move, and I think some thin liquidity as well, as we're in this waiting period ahead of the first round of the French presidential election. So while it's a very impressive move, I think a lot of this is simply resting order driven and thin liquidity driven, and it's about what's going to happen next week, I think very importantly after the first round of the French election. In euro sterling terms, how much further confidence does the market get on sterling as we look at how the market views the euro? 83.50 to 83, a huge level. This is a head and shoulders neckline area that was established post the Brexit vote. So a big focus on that level, as well as whether 128 holds in cable. I would say on retracements we could even hold 127. So what is the outlook for here from here politically? I think it's a lot of questions that will need to be answered around this June election, but clearly May saw this as an opportunity to get a better mandate domestically as the real leader of the party who's been popularly elected rather than simply assumed power once Cameron stepped down. As well, perhaps that mandate extending a bit towards credibility in negotiations with her EU counterparts over the Brexit, and that'll be a key thing as well, whether their stance changes at all. It doesn't necessarily do so, but it does bring the idea, and the reason sterling is stronger, that this means a softer Brexit, less of a risk of a so-called hard Brexit scenario where the UK storms off and has to go its own way, with bigger risks of disruptions to UK companies and other large banks, for example, relocating to the continent, etc. So we have to take this rally at face value. I think maybe a bit overextended in the short term because, again, of thin liquidity conditions, and the key test doesn't come until early next week.